Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday, June 8th. This is Matt with Honor Your Health. I hope everyone is having a fantastic week, staying healthy, and we're going to dive into some self improvement slash some real issues that I feel like most people don't really talk about. The first one is vulnerability. I believe strongly that a lot of, specifically men, but I think a lot of people are feeling it. People are very afraid to be vulnerable. They're very afraid to be okay with who they are, what whoever that may be, right? I was talking with a girlfriend of mine over the weekend, and we sort of talked about how this whole like introverted extroverted thing and the label that people put on you or put on us at an early age of, oh, she's so extroverted, or oh, she's so shy, or oh, she's so this, or what have you. And the label is, I think, what keeps people from being able to be open and vulnerable. We talked about how like for me, for example, once around like 2019, 2020, I guess, uh, I started to find myself being a little bit more okay with not being so out in the open, with being more private, not having social media, coming off of course, other than this, but not having all the means to like connect with people. And someone said to me, "Oh, you're isolating yourself," and I was like, "I don't feel isolated. I actually feel more thoughtful." And then as we were discussing, she and I were discussing over the weekend, my vulnerability is actually that I like to have more thoughtful and more intentional conversations with people, and more intentional thought patterns rather than just going with the grain and going with what everyone else is doing. I've always been a risk taker. I've always been someone who has pushed the envelope in terms of not doing what everyone else does. For example, like everyone else was watching Game of Thrones right when it came out, and I was like, no, I don't want to watch that. And I didn't watch it probably till about 4 years after or 5 years after, and I was like, okay, I see the hype, but like I just didn't want to do it because everyone else was doing it, right? Um, but in terms of vulnerability, I think a lot of people are very afraid of being themselves. And it comes from the story that you're telling yourself. It also comes from a fear of being judged, fear of being, um, uh, you know, criticized for the thoughts you might have. Like, listen, at the end of the day, and the reason why I put being offended or taking offense to things in this title is because I think anymore in our world, everyone is so offended if you don't believe every single detail of what they believe. People are so offended if you don't have the same belief about a topic, or if you're on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence. Like, it's become so polarizing and so ostracizing to the point where it's like you can't even have a conversation with people, and people take such offense when you don't believe every little thing they want you to, right? I don't know about you, but I have individual thought and I think for myself, right? I like to um, get people engaged and get people on. Like, that's sort of why I created this channel, was to make you think and to make you go deeper and to make you confront things that you might not think need to be confronted, but definitely do, right? So, uh, and I think a lot of, again, the reason why people can't be vulnerable anymore is because they're so afraid of what someone's going to think. They're so afraid of, um, oh, this person thinks this about this topic, so we can't even be friends. Well, that's really, it's not a great way to establish a friendship, relationship, anything, because we all have different thought, right? And I've learned that over a period of time that you can't expect people to believe every single thing you believe in, right? Everyone has opinions, and it's okay, right? I think as people who are in their 20s and coming into their 30s, they sort of think, well, if you don't believe how I believe, then we can't be friends. And sure, that might be something that you consider, and that's okay. But I think a lot of it comes down to like, why? Why are you so afraid to connect with somebody who might have a different opinion than you or might be in a different phase of life than you? Um, so often, I think young people, especially, they get very offended when you bring up age or you bring up like, oh, I have more experience than you because I'm older. And it's like, it's true. Like, I have more experience than someone who's 24 or 25. And young people get very offended by that because they think they know everything. And it's hard to be vulnerable with somebody who thinks they know it all, right? It's very hard to be vulnerable with someone who can't ever see your point of view. It's hard to be vulnerable when you're constantly almost like under threat. And I think that's where a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are in this world of they don't know how to be, they can't be vulnerable because I might get attacked for being vulnerable. A really good example is if you were ever abused in some way, right? Um, at home, you might, if you have a very toxic home life or toxic work life or anything, and you find yourself gaining weight or hard to lose weight or anything like that, it actually might be because your environment is threatening your body, right? Your body is putting up this wall because it's been in fight or flight mode. So it's hard for you to be vulnerable and hard for you to like confront these really deep places because you think you're under a threat, right? And that actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. If you feel like you're going to be judged by your significant other or a family member, or you don't feel supported, or you feel like you're going to be, you're going back, you feel like with the situation that you're living in, you think, oh, well, this is where I was 35 years ago when I was getting hurt, and it's like you kind of equate those circumstances with your past. So it's, to me, I've seen a lot of health and healing in my own life from actually admitting my hurt and admitting my addictions and admitting um, my faults and flaws. I think it's really important to start owning up to why you are so hurt, why you are addicted, um, why you have that addictive personality or why you have the up and down personality, right? To go into singleness for a bit, I can attest to the fact of I actually have never allowed myself to be single in the term of I've always, for 15 years of my life, and this is just me being vulnerable with you, for 15 years of my life, I don't think one time did I ever take a break and go, I'm not going to seek, I'm not going to ask. I just want to be, and I just want to like enjoy where I'm at in my life right now. And that scares a lot of people because they think, oh, well, if you're doing that, I should be doing, like they sort of, people sort of think they should be doing what you're doing. And it's not necessarily true, right? Um, I recently had a huge revelation that I really think that I need to just be single and be okay with that. And I am. Because I've realized that I've never allowed myself to just enjoy my own company and do the things that I like to do and take trips alone because I've always been told, like, you need someone. And truth is, like, sure, I would love to have that person in my life, but right now I don't. And it's cool, right? It's okay. And when I hit that moment, I was like, I actually felt this huge amount of relief because I was like, we're pushed this timeline as adults that you need to be in a relationship, that you need to have a family, that you need to have kids, that you need to have a house, that you need like all these timelines. And I just don't feel like I'm on a timeline. I feel like I'm on a purpose, but I don't feel like I'm on a timeline necessarily, right? And being single is probably the best thing for me right now. Being single is probably the greatest gift I could have right now. And I say that because I'm caring for people, right? I am helping and doing what I feel led to do right now. And I think there's just this negative stigma that if you're not out there and pursuing and hunting for someone, you're not doing enough, and you're it's like this really big weight on people that is just not right, and nor is it fair, right? Um, I read or I listened to this podcast recently that said, and I think it was Matthew McConaughey, I think, and he basically was talking about how every day for like a year or like a couple of years of his life, he would literally be driving, and at a stoplight he would turn, and he would like a rooster, he'd be like cock-a-doodle, you know what I mean? Like cuckoo, right? Like ready to pounce almost of like, could that be the woman for me? Could that be the woman for me? Like every side, every way he turned, he was like on the hunt, and realized that the reason why he wasn't receiving that love and receiving that relationship that he desired was because he was so focused and so focused on what he didn't have, and he was getting all these people in his life that like just weren't the person for him. But it was because he needed to do his own work on, okay, like why am I trying so hard to be loved or to be to find this person? And he said it was because he never allowed himself to be okay with himself. And I thought that was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was like, shit, that's me, right? Like I've never allowed myself to just be alone and to be okay with being alone, right? I think so many of us are so afraid of what that feels like and looks like. And it's an addiction, right? It's an addiction to always be dating, or addiction to always trying to find that person. And it's because you're running from something, or you don't want to deal with something. It's like any addiction. Like, why do you drink? Why do you have an addiction to pornography? Why do you have an addiction to whatever it may be, right? And it's because you are so terrified of looking at why. Why are you using this for to run? Like, or what are you using this for? You're using it because you don't want to confront the fact that you're lonely. Not alone, because you're not alone, but the fact that you're lonely. And I had to deal with the same thing. I had to deal with, why am I lonely? And it was because it was, for me, it was like I just wanted to feel wanted. And then when I realized like I can treat myself that way, and I can do those things for myself, at least for right now, and be okay with that. And I also have friends that love me. And I know it's not the same thing. I get it. But singleness is not a bad thing. And again, we're pushed these things. And I hate to say it, but even like online dating, like I did that for 10, no, 13 years. I did online dating. And it's not a downfall to it. It's just showing me that where it used to be was like, yeah, it used to be fun, it used to be exciting because it was something new and you could meet new people and yada yada yada. Now online dating has become so it's white noise. It's like Facebook, it's like Instagram, it's all white noise. No one is committed. Everyone's just like, when they're bored, they're on it. When they're not, it's all about being bored, right? You're so bored that you think you need to use your time to do that, or you're so bored or you don't want to deal with something, so I'm gonna go on there, or I'm alone, or I feel lonely, so I'm gonna cover that with instant gratification of someone liking me. That like, okay, like what's that person liking me, is that really healthy for me? Probably not, because they like me for a picture. They don't like me for me. Like they haven't gotten to know me, right? Um, those apps are all superficial. They are all, and this is why so many people find themselves depressed on apps, because I know I did, is because it's all superficial. It's all surface level. None of it is like deep, meaningful stuff. It can be for some, very few. Some people, they find like matches and they have really fun conversations, and that's great. No one's denying that. But how do you feel on it when you are being ignored, or when it takes someone 5 days to get back to you? Like that doesn't feel good. Anybody who like wants to get to know you will want to talk to you and will want to enjoy your company, right? So singleness, vulnerability, like they go hand in hand. I believe the reason why people are single is because they haven't dealt with something, or they need to, or they haven't allowed themselves to be alone and enjoy their own company. And that's something that I've learned and hope to, bestow on you. And maybe it resonates with you and you go, oh yeah, that makes sense as to why I feel singleness is a bad thing, quote unquote. It's a bad thing to be single. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing. Um, it was just pushed, right? Being in a relationship was just pushed. And I see people all over, like in really terrible relationships. And it's because they never allow themselves to be okay with being single. They never allow themselves to love themselves. And not like love yourself, like being a narcissistic fool. Love yourself, like just caring about you and being okay with yourself and loving every aspect of you and growing and self growth and all of that, right? And being free, right? Really, really understanding that you have freedom in being single. There's also freedom in being in a relationship, right? Um, and then I want to talk about, so I talked about vulnerability, I talked about singleness, and then reactions, right? I think everyone is in such a reactive state, um, because again, you're trying. This is what I believe is, again, it comes down to being vulnerable, but you're trying to make someone agree with you. You're trying to make everyone agree with every word that comes out of your body and your mouth, and that's just not going to happen. It's just not, right? I get in disagreements all the time, but the disagreement doesn't need to end in anger. It doesn't need to end in being overreactive and sensitive, right? Taking offense to everything. It's just a fact, right? Like, I used to be extremely reactive to where anyone would say something to me and I would just get pissed off, right? And I had to dig deep on like why, and it was because I felt like if someone didn't listen to what I had to say, it meant that I would put my worth on that, and it meant that my opinion didn't matter. So this is where we have to separate feelings from facts, right? Your feelings have nothing to do with what you're saying. If you are saying something and it's valuable, we're going to listen and people are going to take it, right? But if you're saying something that doesn't make sense, or you're saying something that doesn't resonate with somebody, or they combat it, or they debate you, debate to me is healthy, right? Debate to me is extremely healthy, because you're hearing somebody else's point of view, and you actually can get a lot out of that. I think people who are reactive want to be right all the time. People who are reactive want to have this like significance, and they put their significance on everything they believe in. And a belief is just a belief, right? You can change your belief system. There's known facts about being able to change your belief system, right? So being vulnerable and being okay with being vulnerable and having tough conversations and being yourself is huge. Being single is hard. It's not easy, but when you get used to being on your own and being okay with being on your own, there's a lot of power that can come from that. It's a very powerful time. And it's okay to admit that you're afraid of being single. I was afraid, literally, I just said it the other day and I was like, I'm so scared of it because I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means to not be on the hunt. But then as I enjoyed myself and enjoyed just like reading, or enjoyed like sitting by myself, or I don't know what's going on with my camera today, but as I just enjoyed being by myself and my own company, I started to realize like the joy I had by just being in my own spaces and in my own world, and not having to I don't want to say deal with, but not having to like have someone to worry about. Um, and I think a lot of people just get into, personally, I think a lot of people just get into relationships, not all, but I think a lot of people get into relationships because they're just so afraid of being alone, and they're so afraid of loneliness. Um, and they're afraid that they won't be loved, or they're afraid of not being wanted by somebody. And sure, it's scary. I'm not saying it's not, but I am saying why? Why are you so afraid of being by yourself? What is so terrifying about that? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying what's so terrifying about just taking some time for yourself and and doing things for you, right? Like writing down some goals and going, in the time period of the next year, not only am I going to take time to myself, but I'm going to really just pursue and press into everything that I'm doing and the goals and things and dreams that I have for me, right? There is nothing wrong with wanting that for yourself. Um, and then last is just the reactive, being reactive and taking offense to everything. We live in this world again where it's like everyone is just reactive. Everyone takes offense because you don't agree with every single thing that someone says. Doesn't mean that your opinion isn't valid. It just means that somebody doesn't agree with you, and that's okay. Um, we need to stop being so sensitive. We need to wake up. We need to put our big girl pants on, put our big boy pants on, and stop taking everything so offensively, right? Life is too good, and we actually have too much in common to unite us. And I think that we are being so driven apart because somebody doesn't believe that you're in this party and you should be in this party, or I don't agree with pride, and that means that you shouldn't agree with pride. Like that's not what I'm saying. Like, and I had a video the other day and someone said, like, I can't believe that you said that about pride. And it's like, listen, that's just my thought and my belief. That doesn't mean that you can't believe in it at all, right? If you want to believe in that, go for it. But don't expect me to believe the same thing that you believe, right? Um, I, in terms of vulnerability, was actually like when I was newly out, so to speak, in my early 20s. Someone actually said to me, "You're not gay if you don't go to a pride festival," and it kind of made me laugh because I was like, "Who are you to tell me what being gay is for me? Who are you to tell me what that means? I don't think that that's right. No one should be telling anyone how to live their life and saying that you're less of a person if you don't attend one of these, or you're less of a person because you don't believe everything that this group tells you to believe. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in the group thing. I've never have, right? I actually think that people who take such offense to things are actually deeply angry and deeply wounded and don't have they are so afraid of being themselves. I hate to say it, but they're really just afraid of being who they are because they're being fed this fantasy of what life should be like. Guys, we don't live in a fantasy world. We live in reality, right? So, and again, it's not to offend, it's just to be honest, right? I have a lot of stories about people being very nasty to me for not enjoying pride and thinking, I actually do think pride is very toxic. I think it's a very toxic environment. June always sincerely gives me like, what's the word? Like it just makes me uncomfortable because I don't think that we need to display ourselves like that. I personally think it's the wrong kind of attention. I personally think it's the wrong kind of life. I don't want a life like that where I have to be so public and out in the open about everything that I choose to do in my life. And that goes for everything, not just relationships. But like, I think that we're being pushed this thought that like, if you're not out and proud, then you're not one of us. And I just don't think that's fair. I don't think it's right. It's the other side of the coin of being super out and proud and super obnoxious. And that's fine if that's who you are, as long as it's authentic. If it's authentic and that's who you really are, go for it, right? Don't go for it in the sense of pushing it on other people because I don't think that that's right, right? Because everyone has their own thoughts and you shouldn't be pushing it on people, right? But when it comes down to other people who have differing opinions who are part of that, or I shouldn't say, who are in that community but don't agree with everything that community does, isn't fair to, like, as a gay guy, I don't agree with everything that the LGBT community does. I don't. I'm just going to be honest. I don't. And if that makes me different and if that makes you mad, I'm sorry. It's not meant to make you mad. It's meant to just be vulnerable and honest with you. Like, I don't think it's right to be pushing that on to kids. I don't think it's right to um, to sport around in next to nothing in front of a kid. I don't. I just don't. And that's okay. It's okay that you believe something different. That's fine. That's where I'm at personally. And I've always been there. I've never ever thought to myself that I need to do that. So, and again, this goes down to all of it being vulnerable. This is me being vulnerable with you. I have a really difficult, it's hard to talk about this stuff because, as somebody who's not like that and who's not out in the open like that and nor wants to be out in the open like that, it's very difficult to talk about because it's against the grain. And when you're going against the grain, people don't like that you don't agree with them. People tend to hate you for it. And it's okay. I'll take the hate. It's fine, right? Because I just know what I stand for, and I know that that's not for everyone, and that's okay. And again, I don't take offense to it because that's just my belief system, and that's where I'm at. And I would be silly to talk about this and then think, oh, everyone has to think the same way I do. I don't believe that. I don't. And I think that I've been going through this change in my life where I am okay with the vulnerability. I'm okay with how I think and how I feel about certain topics. And I think because people are afraid to own how they truly feel and their true opinions on stuff because they don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I'm not here to hurt feelings. I'm just here to be honest with where I'm at. And if that helps you and it helps you get to where you want to be, then that's my goal, is to just make you think for yourself of, do I really agree with this? Or am I just agreeing with it because I feel like I have to, or because I feel like I'll lose a friend or I'll lose whatever if I don't? To me, friendship, and to me, any relationship, if somebody can't respect you and respect your opinions and respect your thoughts, that's not a friend, and they shouldn't be a friend, right? If I'm just catering to everyone's feelings and catering to how everyone else feels, and this is how it used to be, right? I used to like not talk about this stuff because it was very, again, it was a very different thought, and most people are like, oh, if you're gay, you have to believe this. It's like, well, I don't. And I felt like if I actually said it out loud, that people would judge me and people would think different of me. And I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, I don't really care how you think about me anymore because I'm okay with me, right? I'm okay with my thoughts, my opinions, my everything. So I guess my point is, like, it's okay to have a different opinion. I actually feel like because there's so much anger in the world, I think that's why we can't come together and like have these conversations and talk calmly with each other, because everyone is just trying so hard to like get their point across, and be right. And sometimes it's not about being right, it's about listening to the other side. Sometimes it's not about being right, it's just about hearing, oh yeah, like I guess that makes sense. Like I wouldn't want someone to push X, Y, and Z onto me, so why should I do the same thing for them? Right? So I hope this makes you think. I hope this makes you realize that just because somebody has a different viewpoint than you, that it's okay. I hope this makes you realize that for all my single people out there, that it's okay to be single and it's okay to be vulnerable and be with yourself and not need to be on the hunt. It will come when it's ready to come to you, period. That person will be there and it will be awesome, right? But stop forcing something to happen when it's just not meant to, okay? This is your motivation for the week, is just start having thought, start thinking, start being okay with your thoughts and being okay with where you're at and being okay with being vulnerable and being okay with the fact that you might have a different thought than somebody. It doesn't make you less than them. It doesn't make you more than them. And the fact that you have a differing thought, you guys should be able to at least have a good conversation of, oh, I understand you. I can see your point. I might not agree with it, but I see your point, right? Start coming together. Start unifying. This is how we bring our country together as opposed to complete division where we're at right now. All right. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Thursday, and I'll talk to you all soon. God bless.